Really quickly before the video starts, just want to let you guys know that I've set up a Patreon for Kinetic Rugby League. There are 3 tiers which I'll run through really quickly. The lowest paid one is Kid for a Quid, that's just £1 a month. That's general support of Kinetic Rugby League and myself for those who'd like to donate in some capacity but don't really have the means to do so. The step up from that is the Matchday membership, that's £5 a month. That includes a Rugby League podcast every Wednesday starting this Wednesday, and you get access to all exclusive video content posted to Patreon. And the third tier is the season ticket, that's £10 a month, which includes everything in the Matchday membership, but you also get new members listed and shouted out in all videos for that month that you join, access to an exclusive group chat for Rugby League fans, you get to submit questions for Q&As both for YouTube and Patreon, maybe even TikTok, you can submit video ideas for both YouTube and Patreon, even TikTok as well, and potential appearances on any fan segments that I do during podcasts or shows both for YouTube and Patreon. So if you'd like to support, you can click the link in the description down below, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Rob, welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video, I'll be giving you my Super League Round 8 power rankings. Now, there's going to be a few changes towards the top, a few changes in the middle, and there's a change near the bottom that I've been wanting to make for a while, but finally I have a good excuse to make it. So starting with 12th place, Hull FC. Moving down one from the last video. It is about damn time. Now, I understand that there's a slight smile on my face. I'm fully aware that for Hull FC fans, it's a rough time right now. They've just lost Tony Smith, they've lost Tex Hoy, they've lost Farmanu Brown. It's a rough time for Hull FC. It really is. The thing that I don't understand how it went so wrong, because they brought in some decent players. My main criticism of this team was that they didn't really have a recognisable spine. You had a clear fullback in Tex Hoy, and then you had 3 hookers. So from that point on, it's not going to go particularly well. I always thought that Hull FC would be a team that would compete in the middle of the park. If you look at the forwards that they've got, they are insane. There's a huge forward pack to that Hull FC team, and I thought that, you know, that would help them out in a few fixtures where they'd kind of dominate through the middle, and then it would at least set a platform for the backs to go at teams. But it just really hasn't worked out that way. The whole team is a shambles in attack, in defence. Tex Hoy and Farmanu Brown weren't exactly doing wonders at Hull FC, but I guess they were somewhat keeping that team afloat, because I think now that they're gone, the options to fill in are not on the same level. I think there's Lytton, I think his name is. Is it Lytton? Might be. Played fullback for a couple games. And that's like their only saving grace to replace Tex Hoy. But yeah, it's all over the place for Hull FC at the moment. And given London's recent performance, compared to Hull FC's recent performance, Hull FC in 12th. Moving on to 11th place, we have London Broncos. Congratulations, you have moved up 1 place. Very simply, Hull FC have been terrible the last couple of weeks, so have London Broncos, but the gap for me was very, very small. London having that kind of scoreline against a Salford team that, yes, haven't been perfect recently, but when Salford's firing and they're clicking, they are difficult, and that's for any team in Super League. And the fact that London was able to hold them to that scoreline is a testament to the work rate and the effort that they've been putting in since the start of the season and what they've had to endure. This is... it's not the best reward they can get, because I'm still waiting for them to get that win, but to play 80 minutes and to still feel that you're somewhat in that game, you know, if they get one more try or they you know, stop Salford from getting one more try, then they're fully in that game. They can fight right to the end, try and pull out another try towards the back end of the game, and that's it. They've got a win. So it isn't a win, and that's still what they want, and I would like to see them get one, but it's results like this at least give them some kind of confidence and faith in themselves that, look, we can start to compete against teams, we can find ways to shut teams down in attack, and we can be a little bit stronger in defence. We can be a little bit stronger in defence, and we can put up some points ourselves. So London will get there. They will find a win this year. I don't know who it's going to be against. Maybe Hull FC. But small progress. I hope it just doesn't just drop down the following week. But there's positives and negatives, but this is a good sign. Moving on to 10th place now, and still in 10th place, Castleford Tigers. I think Castleford, given where they were last season, are in an okay spot right now. I know they're really low down on the power rankings, and of course in the table, but I feel like given where they were, they're okay, because they will get battered. They have been battered, but there's life to this team at times. There is something to this team where I can look at a fixture that includes Castleford and at least give them a little bit of credit and say, right, I think there's a chance that they slow down the onslaught, and I think there's a chance they start putting up points. Because I thought they'd get absolutely battered against Wigan again. Now, it was a comfortable win for Wigan again in Super League, but they'd at least learned from the week prior in the Challenge Cup and basically conceded less points and put up more points. That's progress. And that's what we've seen from Castleford compared to last season. There is progress. There is a life. There is a soul in that team. Where they're going to pick up more wins, I don't know. I think there are some teams towards the bottom that can start to upset. Maybe some teams in the midfield that they could upset. But I think for them right now, it's just about chipping away, building as a team throughout the season. Whether that will result in a playoff push towards the back end, I don't know. I don't think so. But I'm not going to completely write it off, because I think they've made some progress, and it's good for them to see. I think Tex Hoy, if the culture is right for him, if the coaching is right for him, he can really offer a lot of value to that team and allow Castleford to make a big step up and then start to join that midfield pack. But as of right now, 10th place seems low, but they're doing okay for what they were last season. Moving on to 9th place now, and still in 9th place are the Leigh Leopards. They've put in some okay performances the last couple of weeks. So they were competitive against Kingston Rovers. Like, obviously they didn't get the job done, but they were competitive given the players that they've had missing, and they have a real lack of depth at the Leopards. But when they've got players missing, others step up, and they've put in competitive performances. There have been games where they've been so far out of it they're not even close. But against Hull KR and then against Warrington, to even have control against Warrington in that first half, to be as dominant as they were, my only issue is that they didn't extend that more, and they just had a few too many errors in that game, which basically kept Warrington in it. But they could have been a lot more comfortable in that first half. They were able to get a lot of offloads and basically second phases in each tackle to really wear Warrington down through the middle. But the moment that Warrington shut that down is when they came back into the game. Unfortunate that they also lost from a knock-on. I was able to watch the highlights a little bit after the game, and yeah, there's a knock-on in there from Matty Ashton on the play before the last try. They'll feel hard done by, and that's completely understandable. But I think as of right now, given the issues that they've had to deal with and how poor some of the games have been recently, that back-to-back solid performances against two really strong teams in Super League, I think the fans should be very happy and very proud of that kind of turnaround, and should certainly look forward to the next few weeks. Moving on to 8th place and moving down one are the Salford Red Devils. Very simply, last couple of weeks they've not been great at all. Their only sort of comfortable game was I was expecting it to be against London Broncos, and in terms of performances, you can look at how much a team dominated in a performance, and sometimes the results don't always show that, but given the results that everyone else has been able to put up against London, bar Hull FC, Salford, given how they've been so up and down, I think should have been able to really bounce back this week with a much stronger performance, like a statement win, gets them back on track. They can see that their attack is free-flowing again. Now, yes, they only conceded minimal points, like very, very minimal points, but they should have just been in pure control in that game, just utter domination. And for me, over the last couple of weeks, they have really started to plummet. Like, there are some performances in there, like bits within games where it's like, okay, well, this is the Salford that we recognise. And I thought they'd really kick on after the first few weeks. Like, they looked really solid. And now it's so questionable. Because a few weeks ago, I would have taken them to compete against most teams and even offer up a challenge against the teams near the top. But now I don't really have much trust in them at the moment. So if they're coming up against a midfield team, I don't really see it going particularly well for them. Not necessarily that they get battered, but I just don't have the trust in them right now that I used to have, that they could just go to anyone and just really compete and take it to them. So Salford Red Devils, and there was a high as third at one point, which is mental. But yeah, down one in 8th place. Moving on to 7th place now, and also moving down one, Leeds Rhinos. They were a team that I sort of felt very similar with Salford. I think they were a little bit underappreciated, and they seemingly had some quality. Both of them had changes to the spine, and they're trying to learn some new things. And Leeds were doing pretty well at the start. They were competing against some strong teams. Hull KR, even though they didn't come up with the win, it was still a somewhat competitive effort. Competitive against Catalans. Competitive in both games against Saints, at least for half in both fixtures. So there was something to that team, but the last couple of weeks it's just really, really dropped. There's a lot of talk about Rowan Smith being on the chopping block for losing his job. I don't think it's going to happen yet. I think he's still got a few more weeks to really turn things around. And Leeds the last couple of years under Smith have been up and down throughout the season. So I'm still waiting for them to have that sort of that incline in performance. Defensively, I've plenty of holes in them, and in attack they can certainly find ways to score. But if anyone was watching the live stream the other day that I was doing for Leeds vs Huddersfield, they spread the ball really well inside their own half and around the middle of the park. Created moments very nicely off the cuff, but on the last tackle had no idea what they wanted to do. And even when they did, the execution was shocking. Absolutely shocking. And they had a decent lead twice in that game and threw it away. They were comfortable in that first half. Huddersfield were nowhere near, and they should have been more ruthless, more relentless in their first half performance. But they just allowed Huddersfield in too easily. I know that Huddersfield came out with a lot of fight and a lot of pace, but Leeds, you've got to shut that down initially. You know that Huddersfield's going to come at you straight from the off in the second half. You've got to shut that momentum down straight away, and they didn't. And they allowed momentum to shift in their favour again, but then they lost it again. Unfortunately, they lost the game off a knock-on. It was genuinely a knock-on. It was normally, I think it Clune that got the interception, touched the ball, and it hit Reece Martin. So that is unfortunate. But the last couple of weeks, results-wise, have not been good at all. So they do deserve to move down. It is unfortunate because they have been very high, but it's not looking good at the moment. Moving on to 6th place now, and moving up 2 are the Huddersfield Giants. They have really found some form in the last couple of weeks. Now, their performance against Leeds was not perfect by any means. It was not pretty. The first half was shocking. The way that they spread the ball was awful. Just the link-ups were just really dodgy. The passes just weren't accurate at all. Second half, they came out with a lot of fight. They played with a lot of aggression. They really set the tone coming out in the second half, and they shifted momentum, as I sort of referenced in the Leeds Rhinos section. But the last couple of weeks, they've really started to click. They were up and down the first few weeks, but they're now finding something. They're still not a perfect team, and we saw that against Leeds. I thought they'd really kick on from that Catalans game, and I only had like a 4-point margin in favour of Huddersfield, but I just felt that the performance would have just been, it just would have had more control, but it was too all over the place. So for me, Huddersfield, making improvements week to week, or generally speaking, over the course of a few weeks. Still have some issues in there, in defence and in attack. So for me, basically middle of the pack team, but I think can and will compete with near enough all teams in this league. If they're on it, they're having a good day, they will compete with anybody, but there's still a few holes in that team. If they can work those out, they'll be a firm playoff squad. Moving on to 5th place now, and moving down to the Hull Kingston Rovers. This one does feel a little bit unfair, but the main reason for this is because other positions higher up do need to be accommodated for. My biggest issue with Hull KR over the last couple of weeks has only been the game against Catalans. That's it. Every other game, they've been really gritty. They've still... Okay, something that I do really like about this Hull KR team is that, you know, when they're on it, they play really attractive rugby. When their individuals are on it, they can dominate teams. Sometimes they'll get caught in these real rough games, but it kind of matches that personality of the team. So they can end up in a scrap with another team, but they stick with it because it sort of suits that team. You want to play pretty rugby, we'll do it. But if you want to go toe-to-toe with us, you want to get into a scrap, we'll do it. We'll happily do it. And they hang in there. They play with so much grit. So Leigh was a team that was able to really push Hull KR all the way. And they eventually were comfortable in that game. But Leigh really took it to them. And in a lot of games this year, even in Jesus Christ, I can't speak. Even in the game against Warrington, they didn't come up with the win, but it was still a real gritty game. And you see that Hull KR are a team that they've got that culture that they will just hang in there. They've got that fight, that desire, that determination. And then when it really matters, that quality clicks in. And they didn't get the win against Warrington, but in other games they've been real gritty. The gap against Catalans was just so unexpected. I backed Hull KR to win. I thought, here's a real tough challenge, but I think they're ready for it based on everything that I've already said in this section. But I think, to me, this is a bit of an outlier. And this won't happen every week. This won't happen against Saints. It won't happen against Wigan, or it might. But for me, this is a bit of an outlier. And they'll bounce back. They'll still have other tough performances in there, or gritty games. They won't be best pleased about it, but I do think it is an outlier, and Hull KR will be fine. Moving on to 4th place now, and moving up one, I have the Warrington Wolves. Performance against Leigh was a little bit shaky, so we'll start with that one. Already mentioned it with Leigh's section, but they really weren't in it in the first half. You know, they tried to spread the ball around the edges, but Leigh really clogged up the edges very nicely, and Warrington weren't really able to spread the ball. But there were, of course, moments that we saw with the first try for Lachlan Fitzgibbon that when the Leigh players, they jammed up, there was space in behind, and that short kicking game of Leon Hayes and George Williams is fantastic. Easily one of the best short kicking games in the league. Just general kicking from Leon Hayes is so predictable, and it's so obvious what he's going to do. Now, a lot of those kicks down the short side where they just go high and they try and, you know, pin a player into the corner are very typical in the NRL. But the difference is, number one, the kicks are more accurate, so they get further into the corner. Number two, the chase is better. And number three, the kicks are higher, which means that the players have more time to get to the ball. So 2 and 3 kind of go hand in hand a little bit, but the players are actually busting a gut to get there a little bit more. And the kicks need to be more accurate. I think Leon Hayes is a very accurate kicker in general play, but with those last tackle kicks, like there's 2 players drop back. It's just so easy for the players to take the ball in the best possible field position. It goes directly to them straight away. They don't have to work to get to it, so it gives the wire players more time to push up the field. That's my biggest issue with Warrington, and has been for the last few seasons. Like, defence has been good and bad at times, been generally good this season so far. Attack, I think there's still some problems here and there, but generally is looking pretty good so far. but the kicking game is so boring and predictable. They've got to find a way to mix that up somehow. But the performance against Saints, very dominant, fully earned, excellent defensive performance, and in attack spread the ball really, really nicely. Really went at St. Helens with good intent, didn't give them too much respect to like say, okay, well you control this game and we'll try and slug it out where we can. But no, they fully earned that win. The week before against Catalans, really rough start to the game, but I was proud of how they sort of fought back and really sort of took it to Catalans after that 18-0 deficit. But the last few weeks, Warrington looked a lot better. Dominant against Leeds, dominant against Saints, tough against Leigh, but looked in control once, in the last 20 minutes when they stopped letting the offloads happen time and time again. But Warrington, unexpected win against Saints. Wigan's going to be a tough test when that one arrives, but we'll compete with most teams. We'll compete with the midfield teams and would typically dominate against the bottom three. Moving on to third place now and moving up one are the Catalans Dragons. Insane result against Kingston Rovers. I thought, I've already mentioned I thought that Hull KR would have won that game. Not to say that Catalans had no chance. I felt it was going to go the way of Kingston Rovers, but to not just win the game, but to be so dominant with the scoreline was massively unexpected. And it's really weird because, you look at the last three teams have played: Kingston Rovers, Huddersfield Giants, and Warrington Wolves. And between the three, you would have thought the easiest game in there was Huddersfield. And they got battered, so it's a little bit confusing, this team at the moment. But they are also dealing with injuries, and they're a team that it feels like they have to change the spine every single week. But they're coached extremely well, and they're a really solid defensive team, and in attack can really find holes, and individually got great people on their side. So in the last three games, they've played three decent to tough teams, and to be 2-1 isn't too bad. I do need to see them play against St. Helens again, and the fact they won their game against Saints, is really important for them. Or was Saints in the last three? I may have mixed one of those games up, so I do apologise. But Catalans looking really strong on defence. I do need to see them play against Wigan, because Catalans could end up being top of these power rankings in a few weeks' time, because they've got something to them. They're a quality side, but I think there's just maybe some inconsistencies in there. They fix that, and they'll be right as rain. Moving on to second place now, and still in second place, I have St. Helens. Very simply, not a great performance against Warrington. Now, you can look at the performance against Hull FC and say, look, they bounced back. But if you look at how things are for Hull FC, as much as a 56, or was it 56 or 58? I can't remember which one, unfortunately, I apologise. But to win by that margin, as much as that is an insane result, it's almost like my reaction to it is almost like, well, yeah, duh, it's just how else is it supposed to go for a team with the squad that St. Helens has compared to how things are going for Hull FC? So not to take away from the fact that they conceded 0 points, which is an amazing effort, and I will always say that anyone that does it against any team deserves complete and utter credit for that, because to concede 0 is a great achievement. I just think, just given the circumstances, it's not a miraculous win. It is to be praised, but it's not to be overly praised, if that makes sense. It's kind of like Wigan probably would have done it, Hull KR, Catalans, Warrington, maybe Leeds would have done it. Let's just calm down on that. The result against Warrington was shocking. Really was. I thought the second half in that Challenge Cup game, I thought they'd actually come out and just be more dominant, but they just had no clue what they wanted to do with the ball, and defensively were open too easily. And then, of course, you include a loss against Catalans as well. That's always going to be a tough game for any team. But yeah, it's not looking terrible for Saints right now, but they need to start picking up some wins and need to get that form and confidence back pretty soon, or they could be moving down a few more places in these power rankings. And finally, in first place, staying in first place, are the Wigan Warriors. They look like they could have had some shaky moments. You know, there was the loss against St Helens, there was the almost loss against Salford, and then they bounced back very nicely against Leigh with a solid performance, a huge win against Castleford, and then, you know, still a fairly, you know, comfortable performance against Castleford the following week. Wigan, they aren't without problems. They are a team that can concede heavy points if they come against a really strong and potent attack, but they seem to be still okay with putting up enough points. The only time where they haven't really put up a solid number of points is against Saints. But the gaps between all these teams now, especially in the top 5, is very minimal. So, and to me, Wigan are clearly still the favourites for Super League right now and the Grand Final, but it's not clear cut. To me, they're just the favourites right now, but I can't say with certainty that they will win the Grand Final, because I think anyone in that top 5 right now could all move amongst each other over the next couple of weeks. You know, Hull KR in a few weeks' time could end up going into first with a few really strong performances and maybe some lacklustre ones from the teams around them. But they're not without issues in defence. Sometimes they've had some poor attacking performances, but typically just open teams up left, right and centre. But I think once they find some consistency, or if they find some consistency, they will batter nearly everybody. So they're not perfect, but still just about the best in the league right now. So that's going to be it for my Super League Round 8 power rankings. If you have your own list, do let me know in the comments down below. Was I unfair with any teams? Is there anything I forgot about? Just let me know. Once again, if you would like to support the channel, there is a link for the Patreon in the description down below. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.